And welcome to Bluenotes. Our intro video is coming in 2 seconds.
I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. And so I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Brett Hull, Court, Noel Campbell, Cujo, Jenny Oates, Brown, Chase, Fuhr, Zombo, Cecil, Butcher, Shanny, Tilly, Tuttle, Sutter, Twister, Turcotte, Kimball, Turgeon, Barron, Basson, Pronger, Pearson, Bergevin, Bozon, Al McInnes, Crab, Chuck, Howard, Chuck, Petrovicki, Pellerin, Dimitra, Yate, Corson, Conrad, Gretzky. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in your 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues.
And now, the starting lineup for your Bluenotes podcast. Tom Franklin and the man called Wags.
And welcome to Bluenotes, located on the best city on the Mississippi, the best in the Midwest. We've got that Stanley Cup power, too sweet to be sour. And if you're still clueless, we're talking about St. Louis. We are your home for St. Louis Blues coverage on the Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, joined by the man called Wags. And guess what, Wags? We just got introduced by Tom freaking Calhoun.
I have absolute goosebumps because, I mean, we hear it all the time at the Blues games. We get excited. We're up and cheering. And all of a sudden, he says our names.
Man, you know, they say don't ever meet your heroes, but I was so glad to meet my hero, Tom Calhoun. Of course, Tom was happy enough to sit down and chat with us, and we split his interview up into 2 episodes. Part 2 came out on Thursday, so you can check that out wherever you get your podcasts from. And, you know, not only one reason I'll say there's a little bit of reason we got him to do our intros, not just because we had him on on our podcast, but Wags, we also contributed to his cameo, which he is raising funds for a very good cause for.
Oh, yes. He partners with Be The Match, which was the foundation Layla Anderson is a part of as well, and donates money from his cameos to that organization. And, you know, we thought we would reach out to him and say, hey, could you do it? And then we got to thinking and we're like, we got to do more. We got to find some way to compensate and make a difference. And we're like, why don't we do something through Cameo? So we reached out to him and said, hey, would you be willing to do this? And then how can we either do a cameo or make a donation to the charity in order to help out in some way, shape, or form? And he goes, yeah, just, you know, make a cameo request. Send me the stuff you want to have done. I'll read it. I'll send you the cameo. I'll send you a separate link as well. Like, he went above and beyond everything that I thought he was going to do to help us out. And I couldn't be more thankful for him. And guess what? Going to hear his voice a couple more times on the show today.
That's right. 2 more times, you know, if we have a guest, maybe 3, you know, just great service that Tom did for us. And we certainly appreciate that. And it's just a huge honor. We got both Tom Calhoun and Jeremy Boyer involved, you know, in our intro and outro now, as you'll hear later on. Spoiler alert. speaking of spoiler alert,
We're gonna have a lot of those today.
We're gonna have a little bit of that at the end here, yeah, and you can probably guess why if you've been listening the last couple of weeks. By the way, we are now up to 600 followers on Twitter. I think we're actually at 603 or 604 now. Just feels like every month, Wags, that we're gaining about 100 followers, and then we're coming out with these announcements, more and more frequently. And even without hockey, Wags, this thing's still growing.
Oh, most definitely. It's growing by leaps and bounds. We've been lucky enough to have great guests coming on that are attached to hockey so that we can do stuff while there are no games going on. But guess what? I think you have an announcement about that.
I don't have the announcement, but Guy the Hawaii Blues fan has that announcement in his Aloha Commentary. A little something special we got cooking for you next Monday. And I'll go ahead and get out of the way right now. Just a heads up, with the holidays coming up, both Wags and I will be busy. A lot of us in the Hockey Podcast Network will be busy. No Thursday episodes this week or next week. The Hockey Podcast Network is letting us take a little bit of a break. And then next Monday, we may not stream live next Sunday. We'll play that by ear. If there's some NHL news or Blues related news that comes out, we might pop on. Otherwise, that's kind of up in the air. We will have a Monday episode wherever you get your podcast from, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you go on that. And then we'll also put a YouTube video up there as well. Again, you can find us at Bluenotes Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and all that fun stuff. And then don't forget to hit the bell on the YouTube video. See, ding, right there. Hit that bell because they say that's important for some reason whenever you watch YouTube videos.
Also give us a rating too. That's another way. That'll help us allow us to get to more listeners as well. Make sure you rate us as well.
Yeah, review, comment, all that fun stuff. That helps us reach more Blues fans just like you and get involved in the conversation. You can drop us a comment anytime and we'll pop it on here. Like, for instance, Why a Blues Fan is watching as we speak. He says, good afternoon. Of course, he can say that because he lives in Hawaii and it's the afternoon there, whereas here it is 6:37 and it is evening. So a lot of late night hockey in our future coming up. Of course, for him, it'll be just late afternoon, so not a big deal. And we say that because hockey is back. We have a deal. 56 games coming up this season, and I can't wait for that to get going and whatever form it's going to ultimately take. There's going to be some teams that might not be playing in their home arenas. We'll get to that in a little bit. Alex Steen will not be with the Blues this coming season, though. He retired late last week, and we'll talk about that at considerable length this episode here. But let's go ahead and get the good news out of the way here. As I said, hockey is back. And so we have a deal with the NHLPA announced today. And here, some of the particulars we'll get into here because it's there's some caveats coming up this season that, will affect, the Blues rosters, this Blues salary cap, and, how many players they can carry. There's a lot going into it. The biggest thing is that it is official. The Blues will play out west this year. They will be in a division alongside Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Minnesota, Los Angeles, Vegas, and the San Jose Sharks. So we talked a lot about that last week, Wags, and how it's just for the initial response, it felt like a shock to me because, this would mean, the possibility of a lot of late night games, some teams that are not in the Central Division usually, so going to be playing a lot more California teams. And it felt weird at the time. But, the more I think about it, Wags, and I did a Last Word on Hockey article on this, the more I think about it, I almost prefer being in the West because the Central, when you think about it, it's made up of 5 Eastern Conference teams that the Blues don't usually play. And whereas the West is going to be entirely familiar foes. So I can sit here right now and say that I'm officially okay with the Blues playing in the West. There's a second reason for that, but from the competitive standpoint, I like it. What do you think, Wags?
Yeah, I think it's perfect for the Blues. I'm still a little confused on why Dallas isn't in the Western Conference, essentially the Western Division. They're a lot closer to these teams than the Blues and the Wild are. but it still makes sense for the Blues to be a part of this. And you're talking about competition as well. Yeah, you've got Vegas. Yeah, you've got Colorado. And yeah, you've got Arizona, who is going to be a Central Division rival here in the future anyway. But outside of that, you don't have teams that are really scary. And I'm sitting here thinking, and I saw this go around a lot of different social media sites today, that isn't it going to be real fun to see a Pacific Division Championship banner going up at Enterprise Center and people going, what?
Oh man, I mean, now Nashville's really envious that they won't be in the West, because that'd be a unique banner that they could put up.
They could put up a "We stayed in the Central Division" banner.
Yeah, we stayed in the Central Division, and all we got was the stinking banner. I want to see that go up in Nashville. So yeah, I wrote a big thing about the 3-year head-to-head records between teams in the West and teams in the Central. It's actually eerily similar how that ended up. We talked a little bit about that last week. 37 wins against each division. The goal differential was like almost exact. Same goals for, same goals against, and really the same problems. For the Blues in the Pacific are the same problems in the Central, where we've often noticed, at least I have as a Blues fan, that the Blues tend to play up against teams that are really good, and they'll give a team like Colorado and Vegas a good battle. They'll slaughter the Lambs, that are in the division, the teams that are not very good, like the bottom dwellers of the NHL. No problem with them. It's that nougaty middle that the Blues always have issues with, and even in the Central, their bane has been the Nashville Predators in recent years. Don't tell our Nashville host that, by the way. Please don't. That we don't want them getting cocky on us. And then in the Pacific, our bane has been the Arizona Coyotes. Which Sporty with Corey and Richie, they know about that. They've rubbed it in our faces already. So they know.
We got a cup though. We got a cup.
We still got a cup, and we have a Kachuk. So there we go. We took their Kachuk. So the similarities are there. Another thing that I liked, and this is according to Andy Strickland. Let me find that tweet here. League Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly says they are aware of the concern Blues fans may have regarding late start times out west. I think Bill Daly listens to Bluenotes. He says the league will make efforts to minimize the issue. Now, I'm optimistic about that. It is on record on digital paper that they are going to keep St. Louis in mind when it comes to Pacific Coast starts, and maybe I've been reading the theory is maybe they start games an hour early or maybe 2 hours early if they're playing like a California team. Let's see though, Wags, if they actually execute on that though, because I feel we've heard this before from the NHL.
We have, but I think after what St. Louis has done for the last couple of years, as far as showcasing the NHL at the Stanley Cup, the All-Star Game, the Winter Classic, I think they actually do have a little bit more pull than we think they do. And I think that they will do this. And once again, not knowing what the schedule is going to look like, I still wouldn't be shocked if they found some way to do these kind of like back-to-backs where they play one game early and then travel and play the game the next night in a different city.
But nearby.
Yeah, exactly. Nearby, in LA, San Jose sort of thing, where it allows you to still have some rest, but it allows you to get these games in such a condensed time frame. So it's not just to appease the Blues fans. I think you're going to see that in a lot of instances, actually, not just in this division, but in other divisions as well. You're going to see maybe some earlier start times than you're used to allow teams to rest and to keep players healthy. And yes, we'll talk about the taxi squad here in a little bit as well. But I think they're going to do everything that they possibly can to get the games in a short amount of time, keep their players healthy, and still allow fans of certain teams to be able to watch these teams without, having to stay up late or get to bed really, really early.
Yeah, and as Carter Potts pointed out, he's one half of the hosting team for the Quack Report, covering all things Anaheim Ducks here on the network. He noted to us last week that Californians are working from home anymore. I mean, they're like the percentage of people working from home in California is probably higher than any other state, because they're really super serious about COVID-19. So, if they start a game, like say it's the Blues and Kings, and Los Angelinos are wanting to watch the game, and it's 5:00 and the puck drops, they're home already. They don't have to worry about traffic. That's and it's just so they get to watch a game. The game's done by 8:00 their time. I mean, they're done early. They can move about their life. And especially, I think California teams are probably going to be the last teams to have fans in the arena. I mean, I doubt there is a single California hockey team fan that is going to see a live game, at least in the 2020-21 season. So that's a consideration to factor. And then it's a possibility that, these California teams don't even play in California. Like, for instance, San Jose, they're having their training camp in Arizona because, of the restrictions in California. So, if they're playing in Arizona, I guess all things being equal, and we talked about that last week with Arizona, their time shifts. They have a weird, they play with the, daylight savings time kind of weird. In March it shifts. I forget which way it shifts, but I think
it shifts to the Pacific time frame.
Right, exactly. So so for the first couple of months, I think Californians can, suck it up, if you will, and enjoy some 5 p.m. hockey, here and there. So let's hope that is indeed the case. Now let's take a look at this division here, Wags, because we were talking about competitive balance and talking about, Blues are good against the best and the worst, but, soft against the middle. Where do you see this division shaking out? I mean, where do you think the Blues end up? I'm seeing a lot of third place finishes for them. I'm a little more optimistic than that. What do you think, Wags?
Yeah, I'm pegging them around second or third. I think you look at Colorado, Vegas, and the Blues, and they are the top three, hands down, no questions. It's just going to be a matter of how they finish. Vegas is going to be integrating Alex Pietrangelo into their system, so they may get off to a bit of a slow start. They have to trade away some guys. They may still have to trade away some guys, so not entirely sure what their offense is going to look like. And you got an aging Marc-Andre Fleury in net, but then you also have Robin Lehner in net as well. So they've got a good back end there. Their defense is a little questionable outside of Pietrangelo. And then you look at Colorado, and I was talking to one of my buddies today about Colorado in a sense that, they're scared of Colorado, and I am a little bit as well. They have a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong on that, but Vegas scares me a little bit more because they've been there. They've been to the finals. They've been in the playoffs. And yes, Colorado's been into the playoffs, but they haven't won anything yet. And until they do that, I'm not going to sit there and say I'm confident in them being able to go out there and win in the playoffs. But I do think it's going to shake out to be Colorado up at the top, and then it's going to be us in Vegas fighting out for that second spot. I think Vegas takes the second spot mainly because they have the goaltending situation figured out, whereas the Blues are going in with Binnington and Husso and a third that we don't know who that's going to be. So if the Blues goaltending shows up and shines, then I think the Blues can take Vegas for second. But right now, since Vegas has the goaltending question figured out, I'm going to put Vegas in at number 2 with the Blues coming in at 3.
Yeah, and that's a good point with the Blues goaltending situation. That's still a big question mark going forward. I mean, I think Binnington will bounce back. I mean, he's only got 56 games to worry about this year, and he's going to be rotated in and out, especially because the tight schedule. I mean, it's going to be hard for him to do a lot of those back-to-backs, especially as the season goes on. So we will need to see Ville Husso or whoever the third goalie for the Blues will be in their taxi squad step up, whether that's John Gillies. Some people I saw Gabriel Foley, from Last Word on Hockey, pimping out Joel Hofer.
I'm on board with that.
And you don't think it's too early for Joel?
No, I mean, he's shined in Canada for the World Juniors, so he's been in a big stage. The big thing about this is it really comes down to what the AHL does. If the AHL has a season, I don't think you mess with Joel Hofer. I think you let him play down there and you let him get games. But if the AHL isn't going to play, give him a shot, man. See what you got. Give him an opportunity. Who's to say he's going to even play in any games? He may just be that guy that's there if you need him, an emergency goaltender. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. And we're leaving out Evan Fitzpatrick as well, a guy that hasn't really gotten his due and his shot and has had some good years down in the minors as well. So the Blues have options, but nothing stands out as a great option because we still don't even know what we have in Ville Husso. I mean, he could be a guy that comes in and just doesn't play well. I don't think that's the case, but we just don't know. It's a big question mark in that goaltending spot.
Well, and the need for Husso to step up is even more important because every team gets to have 3 goalies on their roster between the active roster and the taxi squad. So if he falters, then you're not going to be able to go out necessarily and get, a veteran backup, because teams will be, holding on to their goalies for dear life this year. Joe Hamilton of your comrade on Crunch Time asking, does Arizona scare you at all? Well, I don't have to answer that. We'll have Luke Widbin answer that. Their struggles against Arizona, rolls his eyes. He knows of the Blues issues with Arizona. Definitely. Guy the White Blues fan saying that Husso scares him a little bit. That's fair. I mean, because you don't know exactly what you have in Ville Husso at this point. Luke also pointing out if Colorado finds a goalie, this league is in trouble.
Yep.
So I mean, I think Francouz and Grubauer, I think, most Avs fans would say they were fine, but they could be better, so that's, they need one of them to step it up, but I still pick, I'm on board with Colorado winning this division. I think that they're a young team that's only going to get better. Nathan McKinnon, in my opinion, is the best hockey player in the NHL today. Sorry, McDavid. I think McKinnon does more to help his team win and, perform better. Just see he's an exceptional leader. He's just an incredible talent, and he is the engine that drives that team. A very good team, I might add. Second place, I'm gonna say St. Louis squeaks by Vegas. The thing with Vegas I worry about is, of course they got Pietrangelo, but they had a fair bit of roster turnover to get Pietrangelo in. And I worry a little bit about their chemistry issues, coming into this year, because I think there's some Vegas players, like noteworthy Vegas players like Pacioretty and Fleury that are kind of having their, they're not, a little worried about answering the phone, because they might be traded, and that's that can drag a team down a little bit, just, uncertainty. And I think Robin Leonard's a great goalie. I think Vegas has a good defense, but again, it's just a matter of the chemistry coming around in 56 games. I think the Blues have enough to beat Vegas in the standings, but I can see it going either way. So I think that's my 2 and 3. The interesting battle here will be for the 4th playoff spot. And we know, by the way, as part of the return to play, that it's the top 4 teams in each division. There's no, 3 in one division, 5 in another. It is straight up 4 in, 4 out. Done. And so to me, that battle is going to come down to 2, maybe 3, but I'm not confident. I think it's going to come down to Minnesota, Arizona, maybe San Jose if they get their act together. I mean, because they still got a lot of talent on that team. It's just they're an absolute dumpster fire. That's the only, California team I could see surprising a little bit. I'm not confident on Anaheim. I'm not confident on Los Angeles. Minnesota or Arizona, or even San Jose. Who do you think takes the 4th spot?
I'm going to be completely bullish on Arizona. They were on the rise last year. They picked up Taylor Hall last year, and I completely lost track of where he's at right now.
He is Buffalo on a 1-year, $8 million deal.
He's so forgotten because he's in Buffalo.
Exactly.
But Arizona still has a lot of talent. They're still young. They still got Clayton Keller. They've got good goaltending down there. I think Minnesota, they're going to have to deal with the Bill Guerin situation. I think that's going to be weighing on that team as well this year. Like you talk about Vegas with chemistry, Minnesota may have some chemistry issues as well. So I like Arizona. I think that's the team that's going to eventually grab that. You're not so high on the Ducks. I mean, I think the Ducks are a team that could be a surprise team. I really do. They picked up Kevin Shattenkirk. They still have Cam Fowler. They've got Ryan Getzlaff. David Backes is still with there. If he plays, who knows? Not sure. Yeah. They still have Adam Henrique. They've got some good young talent in there, Silverberg and Raquel. So an Anaheim team, they may not make the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make some noise this season. I would keep my eye on the Ducks.
And also keeping his eye on the Ducks is the Wyatt Blues fan. Quack, quack. Mighty Ducks represent. Also, we have some inside info on the Minnesota Wild. Our buddy Luke Widbin lives in the Twin Cities. He feels that Minnesota is still rebuilding. I don't think they'll be a factor this year. Kaprizov and Rossi are the talk of the town, but nothing this year. Now, I think Kaprizov could give you some instant returns right away. I mean, he has all the hype in the world behind him, and he seems like a guy that could step on the ice and make an impact right away. But as we've seen with Russian forwards, Wags, Klim Kostin, excuse me, they take a little while to adjust sometimes to the North American game, if you will. So I think he's got a point. Plus, it's still Minnesota, and Minnesota's still boring as hell. So, that's never going to change. They are like the Chicago White Sox of hockey. They're just, striving for mediocrity every year. I think Arizona will take the 4th playoff seed as well. A lot's been made about their, GM situation with John Chayka and then Bill Armstrong coming in to take over. I mean, for one, I'm pro-high Bill Armstrong. He did a lot of good for the Blues. I think he'll do a lot of good in Arizona. And besides Taylor Hall leaving, they didn't really have any other major departures. I mean, their roster is still intact, and this was a roster that was good enough to beat Nashville in the playoffs. They still have a lot good young talent. Of course, Swansea, Illinois native Clayton Keller. They're waiting for more on him a little bit. I think he'll take a step up this year. Connor Garland, Christian Dvorak. Good defense led by Chikrin and Ekman Larson. And they still got Kemper and Ranta at net, which is about as good of a tandem as you can ask for. It's just a matter of, both of them staying healthy. They're both kind of made of glass, but, as long as one's playing well, they're still a scary team. So I think Arizona finishes 4th, Minnesota 5th. I'll go with San Jose a little bit over Anaheim, and I think Los Angeles is the anchor of the Western Division. So it'd be interesting. It'll be interesting to see this year. Teams will be playing each other 8 times within the division. So there's a lot of opportunity for bad blood to build up between these two teams. And we were actually talking amongst Last Word on Hockey writers, Wags. Look at the East Division. You have Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, Islanders, Rangers, Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington. What are the odds that someone commits murder in one of that amongst one of those teams this year?
I'd have to say the odds are very, very, very high and very likely, and I'm sure it's not going to be just one team. I think you're going to have about 3 or 4 different brawls and murders in that Eastern Division. I mean, that's we talk about the Black and Blue Division that the Blues played in back in the day. This one could rival that. I mean, come on, Boston, Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington. I mean, wow. I'm just glad that we're gonna have so much hockey to watch because I'm gonna be able to watch those Eastern Conference games, see that amazing hockey, and then I can switch over to the Blues Pacific games. Come on, I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot in this season, but one of the things I'm looking forward to is if the East Division becomes like 1970s hockey again, and you have like players with 300 penalty minutes and, just multiple line brawls. I mean, I want to see that back, at least in one division. I think the East has got the best potential for that. None of those teams like each other at all. By the way, Guy, the White Blues fan, feels that Klim Kostin will not be a Blue by the trade deadline. And Costin's a guy that needs to step it up this year. I think we've waited and waited and waited for him. I think his upside as a top line winger's gone. I still think he has a future possibly as a bottom 6 forward. But I'm not as high on him as I was. I mean, do you still believe in Klim Kostin?
Yeah, I mean, I do at this point because he hasn't had to come in and prove himself and failed at it. I think for me, it was either last year or the year before when he was in the preseason. He dropped the gloves against Dallas in a preseason game, and it was kind of all over the place. And then seeing his play in the AHL this past year, throwing his weight around, really embracing the North American style of hockey. I'm still a little high on him. I mean, I'm not sitting there saying he's the next guy, but he's a person that could eventually crack the top 6, I think. But I think you're right. I think at least for the next few years, bottom 6 forward, kind of get the Sammy Blake treatment where he comes in, plays on a third line with a couple of veterans, successful. Put him with Bozak. I mean, you saw what Bozak did with Thomas and Blais. I think he could do the same thing for Klim Kostin, and eventually, I think he can get there. I'm not ready to give up on him just yet. Now, if an offer comes along and a team blows you away and says, hey, we're going to give you this top talent and part of the deal is have Clem Costin involved, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to sit there and say, no, he's untouchable. But I think he's going to contribute to the Blues this year, and I think fans are going to be pleasantly surprised.
Guy the White Blues fan wants a Tarasenko, not a Zombo. Rick Zombo, shout out to Rick Zombo, by the way, was a guest on with the White Blues fan. That episode dropped today. You can check it out on YouTube, as we have on the banner below here. A couple other bibs and bobs from the return to hockey. I'm not going to bore you with just a lot of details here, but training camp will begin on January 3rd. Teams that did not qualify for the 2020 postseason will be allowed to begin on December 31st. No preseason. That's done. Blues were preparing for the January 3rd start already, by the way. Doug Armstrong confirmed that in his presser. I feel that this is ultimately a confirmation of a very poorly kept rumor. I think everyone was gunning for January 3rd and then game starting on January 13th. The hope is to, in fact, actually not hope, the season will conclude on May 8th. So you have a little less than 5 months to get in 56 games. So you're going to have at least about 11 or 12 games per month, for the Blues. So figure 12 games out of, at an average of 30 days a month. It's going to be a lot of hockey that is going to be stuffed in there. But there is a right reason and rationale for that. The Stanley Cup playoffs will feature 16 teams, best of 7, 4-round format, traditional, and they're going to wrap that up by mid-July because NBC has the Summer Olympics coming up. And so, I can't really blame NBC for wanting to get hockey done before the Olympics start. But one positive to this, Wags, is that the plan is to return to a normal hockey calendar for the 2021-22 season. When that happens, Wags, it will feel for me like a return to normal. Like maybe the world is healing, the world is normalizing, we're all getting vaccinated, and we can finally return to life after normal. If they announce that the 2021-22 season is going to be a normal 82 game schedule, that'll probably be my favorite hockey announcement in the last couple of years, honestly.
I think you're right, because at that point, like you said, the vaccine will probably be in wide circulation. We'll have gone through another season of hockey. We'd have gotten hockey. Major League Baseball will be able to start. They'll probably implement some sort of fan return as well. So we'll have some templates as far as how fans returning to the stadiums are going to work. So yeah, I think if they come out and announce that it's going to be normal, I think that's going to be the start of just a normal life again. And that's crazy to be a year and a half essentially after COVID hit that we're kind of getting back to normal. But when you're talking about a league that's trying to get a new TV deal and still trying to grow the game as well, to be the first league that would come back normal, that would be huge for the NHL because they could draw a lot from that. And if they can get a good TV deal and get wider coverage because of all this, it's perfect for the NHL. Just hope they don't screw it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that 100%. Taxi squad. So how is that going to work? Well, we have some information from Cap Friendly on that. Of course, they would be on top of things like this. Teams that are looking to develop their prospects may see the taxi squad as a big benefit to their development. The taxi squad players get to practice, they get to attend events and travel with the NHL team, all the while being paid a minor salary and without acquiring a roster spot. So this is kind of, this kind of goes back to the Joel Hofer argument, Wags, is that, if you're looking, if AHL is not going to have a regular season or if it's going to be a little different, under those terms, maybe Joel Hofer on the taxi squad isn't such a bad thing.
No, I mean, like I said, it's going to give them opportunities. It's not going to count against the Blues roster. There's a lot of positives that can be taken out of allowing a guy like Joel Hofer a chance to be the taxi squad goaltender. But once again, if he's got the ability to go play in a league that's going to have a decent season where he's going to be a starter, I would much rather see him go that direction to get more reps in, just to continue to stay in shape in a sense. If the AHL loses their season, he better be the taxi squad goalie. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. No love for John Gillies.
No. I mean, think about it. His name's Gillies. What's the word that's closest to that? Gillies. And what are Gillies suits? They're camo. People can't see you. It almost feel like having a nobody in net. So, and Mr. Gillies, if you're watching, we'd love to have you on. We'd love to talk about your NHL career and how great of a goaltender you are. But he's not going to be in the net.
Almost like not having someone in net. That's like the Red Wings last year with Jimmy Howard, and his 4+ goals against average, which is probably why he hasn't been picked up yet by anyone.
Shots fired at the Red Wings podcast. Okay,
of course. I mean, we need to hip check them every now and then for what they did to us in the '90s. Those asshats. Anyway, some other taxi squad notes here. And by the way, if there's one disappointment I will say for the Blues being in the West and not the Central is we don't get to beat up on the Red Wings this year, which is sad. Taxi squad notes, as I said, minimum 4 players, maximum of 6. Some other details here. 1 goalie is required on the taxi squad for teams with less than 3 goalies on the active roster, and the 1 goalie must be available for all home and away games in this situation. So say it is Joel Hofer, that is that third goaltender. He gets to be at every game, home and away, and as you said, practicing and just living the big league life. He'll still earn a minor salary, but he'll be at least with that team and getting that big league exposure. So that's kind of an interesting caveat there when it comes to the goaltending situation there. Last day of training camp is the first day players can be loaned to the taxi squad. The taxi squad will dissolve after the season. Taxi squad members can practice with the NHL team. They can join team activities, travel with the team, not required unless you're a goalie. Taxi squad members cannot practice or join activities other than those with the NHL team. So, for instance, if Hofer was up with the taxi squad, he could not play in Springfield, for instance, unless he actually is actually demoted down there, I think is the caveat there. If a taxi squad player is deemed unfit to play, like COVID isolation or injury, the team can request they do not count towards the 6-player limit and maybe shuffle someone back in there. Now, here's a big thing with the cap hit here. The effect on the team's cap hit while on the taxi squad is the equivalent to if the player were playing in the minors, so like a buried cap hit. Like you saw this with like a Sheldon Surrey, with Montreal, and I think Dallas as well had that pill for a while. You had Wade Redden for a while, was kind of the same situation with the New York Rangers where he had they have a big contract. You banish them in the minors. You don't get the full money back, but you still get hit a little bit. And Cap Friendly explains this. So teams do not receive the full cap relief when a player on a one-way NHL contract is reassigned to the American Hockey League, or in this case, is sent to the taxi squad. The player's salary cap hit, minus the sum of the minimum NHL salary for the respective season and $375,000 still counts towards the team's salary cap total. So the cap hit relief is therefore equal to the minimum salary of the respective season plus $375,000. So if the Blues were to send Carl Gunnarsson to the taxi squad, because he makes about $1.75 million and the Blues are still over the cap, the relief would be $700,000, which is the minimum, plus $375,000, which equals to just under $1.1 million. So this is a situation where teams, and there's still quite a few teams that are above the cap, they might be able to, at least for like opening day, for instance, or if it's an LTIR situation or another situation, they can stash players in the taxi squad and get some relief. So do you see the Blues maybe using that to their advantage?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why they made some of the moves that they made, was knowing that something like this might be on the horizon. They knew something like this was going to happen. Being able to put a Carl Gunnarsson or maybe a Robert Bortuzzo or somebody like that on the taxi squad, getting some sort of relief while allowing some of these younger players to get into the lineup is probably the direction that they were going to have to go anyway, because teams aren't trading for a Carl Gunnarsson. Teams aren't trading for a Robert Bortuzzo. They're not trading for a Tyler Bozak, although I don't think Tyler Bozak is going to be a guy that goes on the taxi squad.
No.
But yeah, I totally see the Blues going that direction, and it's no slight to a guy like Carl Gunnarsson because he is the first Blues player to score a game-winning goal in the Stanley Cup Finals. He's going to be a legend in the Blues histories, but he's not going to be a guy that plays much on this team, if at all. I think he's the taxi squad defender. He's the veteran on that squad that's going to be able to take those young guys under his wing and be the shepherd in a sense of these young guys. So yeah, it's a twofold situation. It's good to get a veteran presence on that taxi squad, but it will save the Blues money and they desperately need it.
And we wanted to leave the return to play hockey on that note because of course the Blues have a interesting cap situation made even more interesting with the retirement of Alex Steen. And we'll talk about his career and the LTIR money the Blues will get after this Hockey Podcast Network promo. And then we will start off our Alex Steen segment with our Aloha Commentary. So stay tuned. That's coming just around the bend. Once this promo plays. Well, guess what? We are not going to get a THPN promo because for some reason, StreamYard is not liking when I play videos. So let's go ahead and get right to the Aloha Commentary. If you started right away, we had this issue as well. So we got to figure out how to fix that here. But let's go ahead and get into the Aloha Commentary, and you will notice another familiar voice will lead off the Aloha Commentary.
And now, from Honolulu, Hawaii, via St. Louis, starting in the Pacific Ocean, Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan.
Aloha, Bluenotes podcast, the best show on the Hockey Podcast Network. And now I may be a little biased. I'd have to agree. Me? Who am I? I am Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan. I'm the host of the Bluenote Fan Report, and this is my Aloha Commentary. Last week, I introduced you to disgruntled, pissed-off Blues fan, and talking to him this week, I was like, hey, do you want to come on the show? And he said, no, I'm going to be too busy consoling Luke Teriyaki Fingers. Yeah, Luke, I'm sorry, man. I know that your heart just dropped. On Thursday, we were told that Alexander Steen announced his retirement from hockey due to degenerative disc in his back. Big loss for the Blues. I mean, we know that he was injured and probably would not play this year, but the retirement, big loss. This is a guy that spent 11 years with the Blues. He was, in some ways, and I know this is going to sound punnish, the backbone of the Blues. He really got in there. Whether you liked him, whether you hated him, whether it was a good news, whether it was bad news, he was the guy that did what he had to do. He played on the power play. He played on the penalty kill, 5-on-5. He was dropped down to the fourth line and gladly accepted that, taught the youngsters how to come up. And his reward, a lot of people don't realize this, he started at center for every single game of the Stanley Cup Finals. That is pretty damn cool. Now, along with his retirement, what's next for him? I started my own website and blog, STLFanReport.com. That's the new home of the Bluenote Fan Report. And I wrote an article called What's Next? I look at the retirement from Steen's angle, and me, when I retired from the Navy at the age of 38, what it's like and what's next in your life. Kind of interesting. I hope you'll enjoy it. Tom wrote a wonderful article on the last word on sports about what Steen's retirement and how it affects the Blues, where that money comes in, and what they could do with it. Armstrong said it wasn't going to be spent in the next 48 hours, and he was absolutely right. They haven't made any moves. It's very nice to see that the Blues are taking their time and seeing what they got. And while that's important, here's the big thing. We got an announcement on Saturday that the NHL and the NHLPA have reached a tentative agreement on 56-game season starting January 13th. Along with this, one of the things that came out is that the Blues are going to be in the Pacific along with Minnesota. First of all, the biggest gripe on that was the 9 p.m. starts. I have a feeling with the current situation in California that those teams are not going to play in California and could move to a neutral arena, say Salt Lake City or something like that, with earlier start times. Might not be a bad thing. Not only that, Dallas is out of that division with Minnesota in. There are 4, if not 5, very weak teams in that division. St. Louis is easily the second or third place team in that division, without a doubt. Without a doubt. They come in and play halfway decent hockey. Should not be a problem at all. Everyone who was pissed off about the Pacific, might be a good thing. And then the other thing that came out, and I absolutely giddy over this, is all-time playoffs. Yes, that's right. The playoff is going to consist of 4 teams from each division. Now, I've got one suggestion. Up in the up north, we're going to call that division the Gordie Howe division. That's right. He was the best Canadian hockey player ever. Well, second best Canadian hockey player. But we'll call that the Gordie Howe division. Over in the east, we're going to call that the Bobby Orr division. That's the Bobby Orr division. Now in the central south, we're going to call that the Bobby Hull division. And I know what you think I'm going to say in the west, but I'm not. I'm going to call this the Wayne Gretzky division. That is cool. We used to have old names like that in our divisions. I think it'd be neat to come back this year, see how people like it, and maybe continue on with something like that. Let's go back to naming our game after the greats of the game. Guys, I know it's kind of quick today. I know I had a lot to say, but I'm feeling great. I've written a couple of articles on my new blog. I'm going to say it one more time, stlfanreport.com. That is where you can find the Blue Note Fan Report and my newest interview, and it's one of the best ones I've done with Rick Zombo. Oh, and one last thing, guys, before I get out of here. I've confirmed our surprise for Monday. Yeah, that's right. Monday's going to happen. I'm giddy about it. I hope you are too. Well, this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying mahalo to everyone who has helped me out. I'm not going to say names. You know who you are. Thank you for helping me on this show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Tom and Wags. Again, aloha, mahalo. I'm Bleeding Blue with you. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, and I can't wait to see you again on the next Aloha Commentary and the Blue Note Fan Report. Aloha.
Beautiful stuff from Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, as always. Good report there. And let's go ahead and get right into our Alex Steen retirement announcements. This was one of those things where it felt like, this might have been coming, so it wasn't a total surprise just because of the way he exited the playoffs last season. But we now know what the injury is, and that is multiple levels of degenerative herniated disc in his lumbar spine. That sounds painful. It probably is painful, and that is why Alex Steen is retiring. He, of course, played in the 3 round robin games, just 1 game against the Canucks. Back issues in hockey, Wags, are kind of like oil and water. They just don't mix, so it sounds like it was just time for him.
Yeah, and I'll be perfectly honest, I have a herniated degenerative disc in my back as well, and it's starting to make me wonder, what do I have to do to keep myself playing the game that I love? And if it takes a pro player out of the game, who's to say it's going to keep me in the game any longer as well? It's a painful injury. It's one of those injuries that it's not with you consistently. It's not like, at least for me, in a sense, it's not there, every second of the day. It's when you move a certain way or a player hits you a certain way, that's when it kind of crops up and you go, when you bend over or when you stand up. So it's nothing super consistent. And I think that's the biggest issue, and it could also lead to other things as well. I mean, you don't want to say paralysis, but if you get hit the wrong way, it could slice some stuff. Who knows? And you don't want that to happen. So the fact that this is what took him out, I think that the surprise for us was the fact that we didn't really know what was wrong with him fully. And then he announces a retirement, and you'd say exactly why he's out. That, I think, was the biggest surprise. We didn't think he was going to play this year anyway, but for it to come out that this was the injury and that he's retiring, it's a sad, sad day. And I'll be honest, I was one of those guys that thought Steen was an issue in the locker room. I've said it on air on my other show before. I thought he was the guy that may have been the cause of why some of these coaches were fired by the Blues. But I still can respect him because he came into St. Louis after what he did in Toronto, not really fully living up to expectations as a first-round pick. And he's done everything a dutiful soldier is supposed to do. He's played top-line minutes. He's played bottom-line minutes. He's taken guys under his wing. He's been a St. Louis Blue through and through, and I could not be happier for Alex Steen to be a guy that retires as a Blue. And who knows, maybe he's a guy that might have a jersey retired. I don't think it's going to happen, but he has done so much for the Blues. I cannot wait to have him as part of the alumni.
Yeah, he's been a great warrior over the years. A guy that, as we'll kind of get into here, you kind of suspect may have been playing through some injuries throughout his career, just at various points. I don't know if, like, you mentioned the locker room issues. You're talking about locker room issues like during, like the time when Oshie and Berglund were around. I don't know if he was causing the issues so much, but maybe he just got caught up in them and maybe, maybe just added to the problem. Then once those bad players were out of the picture, he kind of settled down a little bit. That's what I kind of think happened with him because, in the last couple of years, he's got nothing but high marks for his ability to be a locker room leader and, playing without ego. I mean, this was a guy that, when, his quality of play was starting to drop in recent years, as every Blues fan noticed and pointed out, he had no problem sliding into a fourth line role and helping mentor, the Sundqvists and Barbashevs of the team. I remember whenever Coach Berube, he mentioned in a press conference that he went up to Alex Steen and asked him if he could play, on the fourth line, and it was he said it was like a 5-minute conversation, no ego whatsoever. And Steen just nodded his head and agreed that that was the best role for him,
And Tom Calhoun, he said something. I don't know if it was on one of Guy's posts or Guy was responding to a post and Tom also responded to it. But at one point in his career in St. Louis, he went from Alex to Alexander. Yeah. And Calhoun said, he asked him why. And it was basically, he said, it's time for me to grow up. And I think that was the moment that it went from being a kid playing hockey to a leader being born. And yes, it may still have taken a little while to kind of find his path. But once he did, he has been just the perfect example of what a St. Louis Blues player is. And he'll go down as a guy like a Plager or an Unger that people will talk about, maybe not in the Hall of Fame conversation, but a guy that was a key cog and a very, very big part of the St. Louis Blues franchise in the 2000s and 2010s.
And they thought in Toronto that he was going to be a big part of the Maple Leafs going forward. He was a first rounder, had a really promising rookie campaign. And I remember Steve Dangle, who is, the rabid Toronto Maple Leafs fan up there. He's noted a few times that when Toronto was talking about potentially big trades, teams would ask for Alex Steen in return, for, a big name. And Toronto said, no, we're not moving Steen. No, absolutely not. No frickin' way. Untouchable. He was. And then all of a sudden it felt like almost a switch flipped overnight and he was getting packaged with Carlo Koliakovo for Lee Stempniak. That's how quickly they turn on you in Toronto. It was just after 3 full years, and I think very early into what would have been his 4th year in Toronto when that trade happened. By the way, I loved that deal at that time when that happened. Stempy was a guy that he was one of the few Blues during that time period. Keep in mind, this is the late 2000s that was pumping in goals and being a productive forward. But I was aware of the hype that Steen had, at least at one point. And I seem to recall I was actually more excited for Koliakovo at the point, just because the Blues seemed to have an issue where they didn't have any puck moving defensemen during that period, like at all. I mean, Eric Brewer, and that's about it. And then so they bring in Koliakovo, and I thought, hey, this might be a good trade. I mean, Koliakovo is a good defenseman, and this Steen guy might turn out. I loved it at the time. Well, do you remember what was your reaction when that trade happened?
Initially, I was like, why? Stepniak, he was one of my favorite guys. Yeah, he was putting in goals between him and Brad Boyes. I mean, those were the guys that were actually producing.
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah, I know, right? High and wide boys. But Stepniak was the guy that was producing for the Blues. But just kind of like you in a sense that after the initial thing, I sat back and I started to kind of dive into it a little bit. And not only was it a 2-for-1, you were getting a guy that maybe needed a change of scenery. And I think that was the argument that I made back in the day when that happened, because a lot of people were very, very negative at the trade. And my response was, sometimes these guys just need a change of scenery. And that's exactly what happened. We got some good years out of Koliakovo. We got some good memes of Carlo Koliakovo as well.
Yes, we did.
But we also got the best of Alex Steen. And Lee Stempniak is a guy that became a journeyman. He was a guy that had a decent career, and I definitely followed his career wherever he went. Always wish the Blues would have had a chance to bring him back and, kind of employ him into a bottom six role of some sort. But the Blues hands down won that trade, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, he played 765 games with the Blues, 195 goals, 301 assists, was a plus 50 in regular season games, even playing for some not so great Blues teams that were in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Best season was as a 29-year-old, 2013-14. He had 33 goals, 29 assists in 68 games, even got some Hart consideration that year. And that was about the time. There was a very short period of time in there, Wags, where I thought he was going to be the best forward for the Blues going forward. He was going to be the guy that carries the team forward. Not Oshie, not Berglund, not Perron. It was Steen's team. For the short time there. Of course, this was right before Tarasenko broke out and Steen kind of started settling into the role that he settled into. But I remember there for a short time, in the around 2012, 2013, it looked like this was Steen's team.
Well, and that might have been where some of this locker room controversy may have started too, because I'm pretty sure Alex Steen thought this was going to be his team as well. And the Blues organization and the fan base put a lot of faith in TJ Oshie and Berglund and Perron and kind of elevated them in their minds over a guy like Alex Steen. David Backes getting the captaincy. I don't think Alex Steen should have gotten the captaincy over David Backes, but seeing as how Steen may have believed it was his team, he probably thought he might have deserved a shot at being the captain as well. So I think a little bit of animosity may have built at that point and could have caused those locker room issues. But yeah, he was a guy that was producing. He was a guy that he put his head down and he worked, and he was a good two-way forward. He was a guy that did things on both ends of the ice that superstars don't do necessarily. And I think that may have hurt him just a little bit because he was such a solid hockey player like his father before him, that I think that may have ended up hurting him a little bit as well, as the fact that he was a great all-around player. So that's not sexy for fans. And that's kind of why maybe he got a little bit diminished in their eyes as well.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely was not a sexy type of a player, that's for sure. I mean, he would put in goals, but they weren't like he wasn't a dangler or anything like that. He wouldn't wow you with wicked puck handling or anything like that. He was just a hardworking two-way forward, and that was his game. He wasn't overly physical. He never really had big hit totals. Wasn't a big penalty guy. He would get some consideration for Selke, almost every year when he was with the Blues, at least, before the final couple of years. He usually hovered, in the, this kind of surprised me. And I forget this about Steen, but he did have some issues staying on the ice and staying healthy. Like, he usually hovered in the 60s or 70s in terms of games played in a season, but on the flip side, as I said earlier, he seemed like a guy that'd be willing to play through injuries and just be a really good team player. It just kind of left me wondering, what else was he dealing with?
Well, he's a guy that went to the front of the net. He played in the corners. He wasn't a dirty player, but he played in the dirty areas. So
Yeah.
Chipped bones, cracked ribs, things like that. Those are things that you accumulate when you play that style of hockey, and you can play through it in a sense, but there are times where you just can't. And Luke's right, slap shots and garbage goals, although that goal against the Kings was not a garbage goal.
No.
That overtime goal is probably one of the greatest goals in St. Louis Blues history, but it epitomized Alex Steen's career in St. Louis. It absolutely epitomized his career.
Also, one of the best John Kelly calls.
Oh,
After that was a signature moment for them both, really. But Luke kind of brings up a good point. Slap shots and garbage goals. It makes me remember to when Steen was really starting to find his game. He started to find his game not long after Tkachuk retired, and he felt like in a lot of ways like Tkachuk's replacement. Maybe like a Tkachuk light, if you will. He maybe didn't have the propensity for bad penalties like Keith had back then, but yes, and garbage goals said respectfully, dirty areas, very much like a Keith Tkachuk. So definitely a guy that you can respect his game, especially just coming off of Tkachuk's career. Now his retirement leaves the question of his cap hits. So in real life, in real dollars, he is due $3.5 million in his final year. He's going to get it. Even though he's retired, he's still going to get that money from the Blues. And even though he's retiring, his $5.75 million hit goes against the Blues cap. So it's still there. But as I wrote in Last Word on Hockey this past week, the Blues can get that money as a legal cap overage. So basically, it is like they've been given just about $5.75 million in free money. I think I don't know if they get all of 100% of it, but it's, if they do it right, they should be able to get that money back, at least most of it. And it's kind of hard for me to explain how that situation works. Just look for my article in the Blues section of Last Word on Hockey. It's on the front page. I'm not going to, it's a very boring explanation for how that works. But the bottom line, it does give the Blues money to work with now. And with some careful maneuvering, plus the taxi squad that, the Blues can help, that might help the Blues bury some money, like, say, a Carl Gunnarsson or a Robert Bortuzzo, that's a factor. So, obviously, the first thing on the Blues list, Wags, should be re-upping Vince Dunn. And Doug Armstrong indicated that they're still working on a deal, that the Steen situation doesn't necessarily affect the Dunn situation very much. But I'm still thinking that they need to get him done sooner than later. No pun intended. And I'm thinking about $2.5 million gets it done, Wags.
Sounds about right. I mean,
that seems about right.
Still needs to prove some stuff. He's a bottom defensive pairing kind of guy, and we need to see a little bit more before he starts getting that money. And Tucker Armstrong saying that Steen's situation had no effect on this. Come on. They, whether it was retirement or LTIR, they were thinking about Steen's money and how it would affect them going after a guy like Vince Dunn. But with that being said, don't think it's not in the realm of possibilities that a sign and trade still happens with Vince Dunn. The Blues have a lot of defensemen. Obviously, we're talking about burying Gunnarsson or Bortuzzo on the taxi squad. So if they're able to do that, there's a reason for that. So it may still not be out of the realm of possibilities that sign and trade could happen. I don't think it does, because you still need some guys that have NHL experience playing on this roster. But if things don't start off so quickly for Vince Dunn, he might be one of those guys that's an early name on the trade block when the trade deadline hits.
Yeah, definitely. And he's a guy that I think would get a lot in return from a team, because he's still young. His analytics are amazing. I mean, we had Jay Fresh on a few months ago explaining how, his quality of competition is low, but against the opponents that he plays against, he performs really well. So there's definite upside with Dunn. And with the Blues, signing the perfected version of Vince Dunn in Torrey Krug this offseason, and with another Dunn-like player coming up in Scotty Perunovich, it does kind of make you wonder about Dunn's future. That's a question that will need to be answered as the weeks go on. So the rest of the money, it's not all going to be going to Vince Dunn, Steen savings. Tarasenko could go on LTIR at least for a little while, but I think they're expecting him back at some point, so you don't want to spend Tarasenko's money and then Tarasenko comes back and you're in a real pickle. So they can't go too crazy there. In my original draft of my Last Word on Hockey article this week about Steen's cap hit, the same article where I explain how that works, I had mentioned I thought Anthony Duclair might have been a good look at about $2 million or less. I was skeptical when we talked about him with Guy about a month ago. I think he's still a bit of a head case, but as we just dealt with Alex Steen, eventually Steen grew up. I think Duclair is eventually going to grow up at some point, maybe when he's on his 10th NHL team at this rate, because he's already on number 6 at 25 years old. But, Duclair, I had a conversation with Gabriel Foley about this just on Facebook. And, one thing that he pointed out is that Duclair is actually a pretty decent two-way forward. I mean, he can play defense. He got penalty kill time. I actually had talked with Shane Ryan as well with Senzauer about him as well. And, Duclair is not just an offensive guy. I mean, he would give you kind of almost like an Alex Steen type of a game, where he can, give you some offense, play good defense. I thought he would have been an interesting look. But, of course, as soon as I click submit on the article, news comes out he is signing in Florida for $1.7 million. So that's out. I think that leaves the Blues with about 3 options here if they want to splash the cash on someone. Former Blues prospect Carl Soderberg is out there, gritty bottom 6 forward type. I don't know if he's what the Blues need. Mikael Granlund, formerly of the Minnesota Wild and most recently with Nashville. Intriguing playmaking forward in his 20s, and he's been a producer up until his time in Nashville. He's an intriguing option. And, of course, the sexy pick of Mike Hoffman and his 30-ish goals that he would provide over an 82-game season. Not a whole lot else out there, though. So do you want the Blues to go out and splash the cash on someone like a Hoffman or Granlund, or would you rather see them stay pat at this point?
I think at this point, I'd rather them stay in pat and look and see what the trade deadline brings. Don't foolishly waste the cash that you're going to have, because at that point as well, you might know a little bit more about Tarasenko when he may be coming back as well. What's the point of spending the money that you may not have and then having to either release or cut a guy? And I don't know how that all works as well. So that you may have lost that money anyway. I'm much better with them not signing anybody. I mean, obviously Soderberg, they don't need more bottom 6 forwards. They need somebody that's going to make an impact in the top 6. While Mike Hoffman would be very intriguing in my eyes, and it sounds like the talks around him are heating up, it'd be tough because you talk about Duclair being a head case. Mike Hoffman was a pretty big locker room cancer in Ottawa.
Shanahan 2.0, basically, with the wide situation.
So you'd almost think that the Blues would know how to handle that. So that might actually be a check mark in his favor as well. I'd love to have a guy that can come in and score 30 goals, but he just doesn't seem like he would fit with this team. He wouldn't fit stylistically. He's not a grinder. He's not a guy that's going to battle hard. He's a guy that's going to kind of coast around the offensive zone. And yes, he'll put in the goals that he does, but he may alienate himself from the team and the team game. Berube might be able to get him, into that mold, but I don't want to waste 13, 14 games trying to fit him in. It's the round peg into the square hole. I just don't know if I want to spend that time in a shortened season trying to figure that out. I'd rather go with what we know.
I'm kind of with you on that. And not only that, but Jay Fresh came out with a newsletter today, and he kind of reiterated a point about Hoffman, and that is he is goals and nothing else. You will not get any sort of two-way ability with him. He is a swinging saloon door on defense. He just does not give one single shit about playing defense, and that's his MO. That's just the way he is. He is a scorer. He's not even a playmaker. The guy doesn't even, his passing metrics aren't great. So you're getting a pure scorer. So I mean, unless you're thinking about, okay, maybe this is a guy we pair with Robert Thomas to pad, Thomas's playmaking ability, maybe, but I don't think that role is there, because I think they're going to have Thomas probably. You're looking at him either being with Schwartz and Shen, which is where I think he ends up, or with O'Reilly and Perron. And O'Reilly's a center, and he's not going to move from being a center. They want Thomas to be a center. Shen can move to the right wing. So I think that's probably where Thomas ends up. So you don't want to deprive him of that, which is why you don't sign a Mikael Granlund, because Mikael Granlund, you're pretty much getting the left-handed version of Robert Thomas, and there's only one of those roles for Thomas to get, in those lines. And I don't think, I just don't think Granlund is a fit. I don't think he is it's the style of forward that they need right now. I think they need to give Jordan Kyrou a chance. They need to move Robert Thomas up into a top 6 role. And none of those options really help the Blues in that regard. Now, Armstrong didn't rule out signing anyone, but it felt like a typical neutral, response from him in that, of course, he's not going to, wave at a good opportunity, goodbye. He's always going to be looking for opportunities, but I think I don't think it's going to happen. The Mike Hoffman dreams, I don't think it's going to happen, especially with apparently talks around him heating up. The idea of signing him as a bargain, I think that ship has sailed.
Well, and I think that's probably why Doug Armstrong is saying that they might be kicking the tires on him, because that's going to drive the price up for somebody else. They may not make an offer, but just having the fact that the Blues are rumored to be talking about him, that may make a team scared and throw a little bit more money at a guy like Hoffman, hurting their cap chances as well. So it's a GM power play move. It's one of those things that you may not even be thinking about doing it, but just voicing that you might be, it gets other GMs going, ooh, I've seen what he's done the last couple of years. I don't want to give him the opportunity to steal somebody out from underneath my nose. I'm going to go in with an offer this guy can't refuse. Well, Doug Armstrong's sitting there going, I just made San Jose spend $3 million more than they were supposed to. I can see Doug Armstrong doing that too.
I can definitely see him doing that as well. Luke Widbin, I would rather the team have the flexibility to give Thomas and Kyrou the top 6 minutes than look outside. I'm definitely with Luke Widbin on that. And funny, Luke Widbin chimes in there because, look at us. We're already replacing Alex Steen's spot on the roster here. And Luke Widbin is probably smashing his keyboard, just even thinking about how, we've already sent Alex Steen into the sunset, so now we're already moving on from him. Steen, of course, was Luke Widbin's favorite player. And when Luke approached me Thursday asking if he could do a Steen tribute, I knew it would be good. And guess what, guys and gals? It is good. And here it is. Here is the latest musical masterpiece from Luke Widbin, sung to the tune of Elton John's Candle in the Wind. This song is called Goodbye, Alex Steen.
Goodbye, Alex Steen. Though things didn't end the way you would want, you had a great career that you would never flaunt. They drafted you in the first round, and they didn't appreciate the style you played, so they traded you away. And it seems to me you played the game with a candle to your rear, never wanting to leave the ice when the pain set in. And it was a joy to watch you give it everything you had. Your body gave out long before your legend ever will. "12 years with the Blues, first line penalty, kill power play. You didn't need to be the superstar. You let others take the fame. You were player of the month and would have been an all-star too, but that year was the Olympics where your team was number 2. And it seems to me you always scored when your team needed the win, like against LA and Chicago when you forced it in. And I would have liked to see you play a season of 82, but when you play the full ice game you did, you're gonna take a bruise. Goodbye, Alex Steen. When Chiefs led you down, you didn't complain at all. You put the team before yourself, and everybody saw. Alexander Steen and the fourth line keeping top foes off the sheet all through the playoffs. As team after team we'd beat. And it seems to me you played the game with a candle to your ear. All to lift Lord Stanley's cup, grinning toothless ear to ear. And I'm gonna miss watching you play like when I was a kid. Your body gave out long before your legend ever will. Thank you, Steiner, for the memories and everything you did.
And thank you, Luke Widbin, for that masterpiece. I like you. It was so touching, Wags. You had your hat off in reverence.
It was like a tribute. It really was. I mean, it's just like when you see a funeral procession pass, or the national anthem play, and you take your hat off as a sign of respect, and that's a sign of respect for Alex Steen right there.
And you do that when you get a candle to the rear. Candle in the rear, I guess is what it is. Hashtag candle in the rear. Get it trending, everyone. A great line. Great line. So yeah, that's. We'll share that full video whenever he makes it public, and of course, thank you, Luke Widbin, for that contribution, and thank you, Alex Steen, as well, for from Blues fans. I know Alex was a guy that got a lot of flack in his last few years from fans because he wasn't worth the $5.75 million, at least on paper, they would get every year. I never was really too sour on Steen. I mean, because I thought that when he fully transitioned into that fourth line role and helped Sundqvist and Barbashev up their games, I saw the value in him, and you saw the value in him as a leader. Of course, Layla Anderson saw the value in Alex Steen. I mean, she's one of his biggest fans as well, and just he's a warrior, and it's a shame he's gone. It's a shame that he's retired, but thanks for, what was it, 12 seasons of very solid play.
12 seasons, man. That's just incredible. I mean, 12 seasons for the Blues and playing through injuries. And you talk about his contract. And at the time that the Blues signed him, that's what they had to sign him to. And A, in order to keep him, and B, because that was what he was worth to the team at that time. And yes, as the years went on, a fourth liner making $5+ million is not all that great, but like you said, the impact he made on guys like Sundqvist and Barbashev, especially, it's not lost on what he meant to this team. And sometimes you pay him for past success, and that's what Alex Steen had, was past success with the Blues, and he had great success in 2019 when he helped that team win the Stanley Cup. And I'm glad that he got a chance to win the Stanley Cup before this back injury took him out of the game. Yeah,
definitely. It was a good moment seeing him lift the cup. Very underrated moment in all of that was going on. So, quick programming note in case you've joined us since the beginning. No Thursday episodes this week or next week. Both of us have holiday New Year's plans, and the network is giving us a break. We will have an episode for you next week. We may not stream it live on Sunday. It may just be a Monday episode, wherever you get your podcast from. We'll be joining Guy the Hawaii Blues fan in an interview with a local TV personality that you see during Blues games. I had it listed to mention who it is, but I think Guy didn't want us to jinx it. so just in case something happens, because that's just life. So we're not going to announce who it is, but it's a guy that and it's a guy that you see on TV during Blues games. We'll be recording with him tomorrow, and we'll have that for you next week in place of our usual episode. Unless there's some news that happens, then we might pop on live next Sunday, but we will just have to see about that. We hope that you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and holidays. We love each and every one of you, and we will be back next year with more Blues. Oh, wait a second. I forgot something, Wags.
Yeah, there was a pretty big episode that happened. Well, I mean, at least a big episode for me. I mean, this is definitely the way, is it not?
Yeah, I think this is the way. Now we have to talk.
We got to end the show.
Star Wars, The Mandalorian. We've got some stuff we need to chat about here with The Mandalorian. We're going to keep recording here. If you haven't watched The Mandalorian, this would be the point of the episode where we wish you farewell. Thank you for listening, because without you, there's no me, there's no Wags, yada, yada, yada. You've heard it so many times before. But if you have watched The Mandalorian, the season finale of season 2, stick with us here. This is your official spoiler alert. Spoilers are coming up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Luke Skywalker.
You kind of knew it was coming, but you still were like, how were they going to do that? Were they actually going to do that? But as soon as that X-Wing flew into the picture, you were like, oh shit.
It couldn't be anyone else. It couldn't be.
And I like the symmetry that they had, because I mean, you've seen Rogue One. So you saw the very end, Darth Vader in the shroud of smoke, lightsaber ignited, and then just goes badass Darth Vader. Well, this is Luke's turn to be in his prime, and you get badass Luke Skywalker, and then it ends with him lightsaber on in the smoke shroud before it's revealed that it is him. I mean, it's just perfect symmetry. What Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have done for Star Wars fans is nothing short of spectacular. Peyton Reed, the guy who directed Ant-Man, was the director of this episode, which is a bit of a surprise. Was for such a big moment, definitely surprised that was who they had directed. But he did a phenomenal job. And yes, questions were answered, but so many fucking more questions were brought up.
Well, that's what next season is for.
That end credit scene too, the Book of Boba Fett. I've been waiting for that for years as well. You talked about last week how I was still ready for Rogue Squadron. The fact that we're going to get a Boba Fett miniseries, TV show, whatever it turns out to be. Oh, my dreams are coming true.
Now, I read some speculation that the Book of Boba Fett would be the Mandalorian season 3. Have you? I thought it was supposed to be its own thing, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've read both sides of that. When it first dropped, people were like, "Oh, this is going to be season 3. It makes total sense." But it's one of two things that it's going to be. It's either going to be a precursor to the season 3 of The Mandalorian, kind of like, if it's a short miniseries, it might be the lead up to the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, or it's going to be its own entity. And I believe it's probably going to be more so of its own entity more than anything else. There's going to be a season 3. There's no way they're sidelining Grogu and the Mando for a full year, because it's going to be a year until all this comes out anyway.
Yeah.
Why are you really going to sit there and say you're going to go 2 years probably in between seeing Grogu and the Mando again? No, that's just not going to happen.
And I think they've already said that we have not seen the last of Grogu. I mean, we will see him again, going forward. By the way, that final scene with Grogu and Mando, when Mando takes his helmet off and Grogu reaches out. I mean, it was hard to keep tears back for that.
It was, because he broke the code. He allowed Grogu to touch his face. I mean, it wasn't just about taking the helmet off and letting him see his face. It was about the human contact. And don't forget, he didn't just show his face to Grogu either. He showed his face to everybody that was on the bridge. So you could start to see the crumbling, and not necessarily the crumbling, but the pieces falling away. And don't forget, he's also now the rightful leader of Mandalore. And that's a whole nother piece that we're like, boof.
So are we going to see Mando versus Bo-Katan next season? Because I mean, that under the rules of that blade, Bo-Katan has to best Mando in a battle to get the blade, and therefore Mandalore.
Yeah, that's very, very possible. And shout out to one of our hosts on the Vegas Nightly podcast as well. He brought up a good plot hole that in the cartoon series, Bo-Katan had the Darksaber because Sabine Wren gave it to her. They didn't fight, all that stuff. And now they're sitting there going, oh, well, why is that different? Look, I know it's not been explained, but it probably will. My thought process is that the reason that Bo-Katan doesn't have the Darksaber now is because she didn't earn it. The Mandalorian people, the tribes, basically poo-pooed her as the leader because when the story came out, because that's what Moff Gideon said, was it's not about the power it wields, it's the power of the story. Well, when the story comes out that she didn't win it in battle, she probably had to abdicate usage of the Darksaber, and that's how it fell into the Empire's hands. That's how Gideon got it, and that's why she didn't take it when Mando offered it to her. So yeah, you kind of have to connect some dots to get there. And yes, it may be one of those things that it probably was a plot hole that was there, but there's a nice, easy way to kind of wrap that up. And don't think too hard on it, okay? It's going to be explained, and there's a reason for everything. Pablo Hidalgo does a great job connecting the dots when it comes to Star Wars. Things don't get approved and done unless it goes through Hidalgo's desk and past his eyes. So there's definitely a reason why they went this route. So don't be too critical or analytical about it because there's a reason.
No, this is a situation where I am willing to, let go of control of, like in past series, for instance, like when The Force Awakens came out, I was among many Star Wars fans that like to nitpick every single little thing about it. It almost lent itself to that kind of a response. In this case, I'm like, okay, you have given us the great stories so far here. Just, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to take whatever you give me at this point, because I trust you at this point to give us a great story. And, I'm really excited to see what happens with the book of Boba Fett. Boba Fett, the crime lord, is going to be awesome. And looks like Fennec's going to be still around for that as well. Who, by the way, the actress that plays her, I thought I recognized her from somewhere. Not just from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She was on that. Did you know she was Chun-Li from the Street Fighter movie in the 90s? I didn't connect that at first.
Yeah, I believe she was also, I think she might have been the voice of Mulan in the Disney movie as well. The cartoon, the better one.
So she's got some heavy nerd cred.
Oh, big time. Melinda May in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like you said. I was happy they brought her. I mean, you knew when she was cast last year and was only in the one episode that there was something bigger in store for her, because you don't just bring in a character like or a name like that and have her in one episode and kill her off. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they eventually connected her, Boba Fett, and everything, I mean, just once again, sheer genius writing. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have endeared that trust in us, and I cannot wait. And don't fret though, because we've got the Bad Batch cartoon series coming out in February, so we're not going to be without Star Wars content. You still got Rangers of the New Republic. We're going to have the Ahsoka series, the Cassian Andor series. I mean,
it is so exciting what's coming up. It has got me back into the Star Wars universe again. I mean, I grew up a big Star Wars fan. I was never a Trekkie. I was always a Star Wars guy. I've watched the original trilogy at least 100 times. I've watched the prequels probably at least 10 times a piece, even though they're cringy in areas. And I was one of those fans that got kind of deflated, with the sequels, 7, 8, and 9. I didn't hate them, but it definitely left me wanting more per se. And so I'm excited to see what's coming up here. By the way, I figured you'd be a Fennec fan because, like you, she also has had major stomach surgery. So
I want to know how Boba Fett saved her in the middle of the Tatooine desert with that technology. That's the story I want to hear.
That's going to be in the book of Boba Fett. Maybe it's the flashback.
How about this though? I mean, if they can get Daniel Logan to come back and play a young Boba Fett as well, the flashbacks that could be used in that would be a great tie-in as well. Everything I've read on Twitter, he's definitely a guy that is kind of up for it. So depending on what this show is about. If it's a short series, maybe not, but if it's a longer episodic show, we might get a chance to see the younger days of Boba Fett as well, which I think would be very, very intriguing.
And you've got me going back and starting what I didn't finish before, and that is going through the Clone Wars cartoon series to try to backfill some of this knowledge. And then I'll go back and watch The Mandalorian and, connect the dots that, happened from there. I to be quite frank with you, Wags, I needed the Clone Wars because after The Mandalorian was done, that was 8 episodes. 8 episodes of greatness, but it's just like, I want more. For what I thought The Mandalorian I thought it was 10 episodes. So it was like much to my shock and disappointment when I got to episode 8 and it was the finale. I'm like, no. Oh well. I guess I'll have to wait for the new series coming up. But man, I am back on the Star Wars train.
Good, because it is rolling ahead quickly, and so many great things. Like you said, you're going to have the Clone Wars, which you're going to be able to get a lot of stuff. The Star Wars Rebels show was another one that you're going to get a lot of tidbits. The Darksaber plays into both. Mandalorians play into both. You're going to get a lot of great character developments. We talk about Ahsoka's journey. We talk about Anakin's journey, Obi-Wan's journey. You get Captain Rex, among others. There's so many great stories that Filoni and his team have come up with that it will redeem the prequel trilogy. The Mandalorian is redeeming the sequel trilogy, and Rebels actually helps you understand the middle trilogy a little bit more as well. So like everything's being tied together, and then we're going to get the High Republic series in January, which is going to start off in book form, but now we're getting a whole nother era that we're going to be able to talk about and form things around as well that's not connected to the Skywalkers. So a lot of great things on the horizon for Star Wars fans.
They are really building this whole universe out, which is something I've always wanted as a Star Wars fan. The movies are great, but it's like, they're linear stories, that focus on one aspect. And, you may get a, sampling of some of these other planets and things like that. But you just knew there's just so much lore that could be expanded out from this universe. I mean, and just we're getting it now, and it's exciting.
It took Disney to be able to do that because George Lucas wasn't going to be able to expand it because it was just him and his company. Now that you've got Lucasfilm under the Disney umbrella, you've got so many great directors coming in. I mean, hell, Bryce Dallas Howard directed an episode. Rick Fumiyama has directed episodes. Filoni, Taika Waititi, Peyton Reed. I mean, Robert Rodriguez directed one as well. So you're getting a lot of that. As well, the diversity coming into these different episodes because of the Disney umbrella. And you can say what you will about Disney. I get it. They're a behemoth and things are sometimes not great when it comes to Disney, but they've produced Marvel. Now they're doing Star Wars and they're doing a couple of other really, really big things as well. So I am, as a Star Wars fan, happy that Disney has it and the direction that they're going. If they would have continued the path of the sequel trilogy, maybe not so much, but what they're doing now has really opened up a bunch of possibilities.
Absolutely. I can't wait for all of them. Just, I'm ready. Hook it into my veins. I'm so ready for it. So ready for it. All right. That is going to do it for us here on Bluenotes. I want to thank you for listening and watching because without you, there is no me. There is no Wags. There is no Hawaii Blues fan. There is no Luke Widbin. And there is no Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you to not be a chump and always play to the whistle.
A reminder that you can follow Bluenotes on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Bluenotes Pod. I'm the voice of the blues, Tom Calhoun. Jeremy Boyer, play us out.
You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or